Presidente Mattarella, Magnifico Rettore, Professor Zironi, distinguished guests and speakers, dear students, dear faculty, carissimo Mario. It is such an honor to join you today to celebrate 120 years of outstanding accomplishment by Bocconi University, but also the conclusion of your amazing tenure as president of this university, dear Mario. Bocconi has always had a European vocation. Since its foundation, Bocconi's goal is to raise new generations of European leaders. And you, dear Mario, you have renewed and realized this European vocation over and over. You made Bocconi a founding member of Civica, the European Network of Social Science Universities. You helped Bocconi to attract students from over 100 different nations. You have given almost 60 years of your life and your work to Bocconi. And the results are there for all to see. This is your legacy, dear Mario. It is the bright future of these students here in this room and outside, and one of the whole Bocconi family that is your legacy. And I have been so lucky to have you, Mario, as an advisor and as a friend. In all these 3 years that I spent at the helm of the European Commission, I benefited a lot from your advice as an academic, but of course also from your experience as a former Prime Minister of Italy. Throughout your career, you have strived to keep Italy at the heart of Europe. And you have made Italy's voice heard and respected in all European capitals. You have always been a link between the north and the south of Europe. And I've often heard you explain that Europe is strong when Italy is strong, and vice versa. You have been an advocate and an architect of reforms here in Italy to modernize the country, to strengthen its place as Europe's second largest industrial power. And at the same time, you have been an advocate and architect of reforms in Europe too. Because you have always believed that Europe had to change to keep pace with the changing world. Oggi l'Italia è più europea e c'è più Italia in Europa. Grazie, Mario. As European Commissioner, you were a guardian of free and fair competition and, of course, of our single market. As Prime Minister, we heard it, you stabilized the Italian economy. And in parallel, you started calling for change in the European Union economic governance. You have always stressed the crucial link between investments on one hand and reforms on the other hand. And to put it in your words, public investments are the fuel of economic growth, but reforms are the engine. And this philosophy has been our guiding light throughout these years of pandemic and war. Today, I would like to mention 3 examples on how the right mix of investments and reforms is moving Europe forward. Let me begin with Next Generation EU. Next Generation EU, our 800 billion euros plan to boost and modernize Europe's economy after the pandemic. And Next Generation EU and Italy is a perfect match. Italy is receiving more than 190 billion euros for investments and reforms. Almost 67 billion euros have already been handed over to Italy, and their impact is starting to be very visible. I know, for example, that Bocconi and the 3 other universities in Milan have just launched a project called MUSA for urban regeneration, funded by Next Generation EU. You are mobilizing 700 researchers and joining forces with 20 private companies from the energy sector to the pharmaceutical sector and to the chips industry. And together you will design the city of the future, powered by clean energy and with clean transport for all, that will host high-tech companies and create new, well-paying jobs. So I am very proud that Europe is investing in such an ambitious and good project. Besides unprecedented investments, Next Generation EU has also promoted some crucial reforms. One of them is the reform of public administration. And I know that some professors from Bocconi have been closely involved in its inception. Thank you very much for that. But also reforms to reduce, for example, late payments, or bureaucracy for small companies, or reforms to accelerate procedures for renewable energy. And I'll come back to that later. As you say, Mario, reforms are the engine of Italy's economy. They can really boost the recovery. My second point is on investment and reforms to make energy more affordable. Italy is one of the countries that was hit the hardest by Russia's gas blackmail. Putin has cut its export of pipeline gas to Europe by 80% in only 8 months. But we have managed to compensate and to diversify. And Italy makes a perfect example. You used to import 40% of your gas from Russia, and now that share is down to roughly 10%, thanks to an impressive effort to diversify your supply. Europe's storages were filled by 96% at the beginning of November. So with all these measures, we're safe for this winter. But of course, this comes at a tough price, and that is the price of energy. And therefore, in parallel, we have worked on a set of measures to bring down the prices. We have insisted on a solidarity contribution on the extra profits of energy companies. It will generate roughly 4 billion euros in revenues here in Italy already in 2023. It is money to support vulnerable households and vulnerable businesses. We are also working on a joint purchase of gas, because if we go to the markets to buy gas, it is much better we go as 27. We have much more market power than by going individual and driving up the prices like that. So we can get better prices with joint purchase. And we have proposed the so-called market correction mechanism, which is basically a price cap. Italy has demanded it from the very beginning. Thank you, Italy, for that. It will prevent excessive price hikes. It will cut manipulation, and it will cut speculation. And as we speak right now, member states are discussing on how to make it fit for all of the European Union. I'm very confident we'll have it in place before the end of the year. But now, we must focus on the next winter. Not this one, he was safe for this winter, but the next year and the next winter. There is still a gap to be filled. But the good news is, the reassuring news in a very difficult story is that we have the potential, but it is just untapped. And this potential is renewable energy. This year, we have achieved the largest growth in renewable energy in the history of the European Union. 50 additional gigawatts, which is double of what we had added last year. And we could accelerate even more. It's not figures from the European Commission, but the International Energy Agency that tells us that we could replace another 14 billion cubic meter of Russian gas already next year if we are speeding up the renewable projects, the renewable energy. These projects are ready to go, but they are stuck because of slow permitting. So, we have therefore just passed a new emergency regulation to immediately unblock renewable energy projects now. Because, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friend, renewable energy is not only good for the climate and for the planet. Yes, it is good for that. But renewable energies are also good for our independence because they are homegrown and they are affordable compared to fossil fuel. Fossil fuels are much more expensive than renewable energy. So let's go for the clean and independent version of energy, and this is renewable energy. I think we should work now together on the necessary reforms to accelerate the green transition. Italian families do need clean and affordable energy, and Italian industry also need clean and affordable energy. And therefore, let's have a look at the business sector. Italy is home to some of the most innovative companies, small and medium-sized. So the industrial basis is strong. But the cost of energy is heavily weighing on them. And the only sustainable way out, as we've just discussed, is the transition to renewable energy that is not only affordable but homegrown. But this transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy takes time. And the global competition is getting tougher. As you know, the United States has just presented a massive investment plan into the clean tech sectors, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. I must say, first of all, it is good that the United States is joining us in decarbonizing their economy. That's good. It matters because the United States is the second largest emitter in the world. But the Inflation Reduction Act can also create distortions by, for example, privileging US firms. It is the Buy American logic that underpins part of the IRA. It is tax breaks that could lead to discrimination, and it is production subsidies that could discriminate European companies. So we have to address this. And this is why we are thinking about 3 different lines how to nurture our clean tech industry. The first point is against the backdrop I just described, that we have to adjust our own state aid rules. We have to make it simpler for public investment to power the transition. Our state aid rules exist for a very good reason, and you would know it better than you, dear Mario. You have been Commissioner for Competition. So you know it, that it is necessary that they have to make sure that companies from all member states can compete on equal footing inside the single market. However, now we have to take a fresh look. This includes, for example, how we can make our state aid frameworks more predictable and more simple and faster. or how we can support the whole value chain down to the mass production of the most strategic green tech solutions and clean end products. So lots of strategic work to do. But we also know that not all member states have the same capacity to invest in their budgets in strategic sectors. And this is my second point. Not all member states have the fiscal space for state aid. So we need complementary European financing to foster this clean tech across the whole European Union. And this is where Repower EU comes into play. Repower EU is our new plan to overcome our energy dependency on Russia. Repower EU would mean 9 billion euros in clean energy investments for Italy. I have now proposed to further boost Repower EU to accelerate the clean transition all across the European Union. That's the short term. In the midterm, we need a structural solution for our clean tech industry. The goal of our European policy is for European industry to be leaders, world leaders, in the clean transition. So this is why I introduced the idea of establishing a sovereignty fund. The logic behind it is very simple. If we have a common European industrial policy, this requires a common European funding. So here, too, this is about strategic decisions that would allow us to maintain global leadership. And my third point is that we are very closely working with the Biden administration right now on the most concerning aspects of the IRA. And this concludes, for example, that we have joint efforts on several clean tech sectors where we face together the same challenges. We face, for example, the challenge together that we are developing an over-dependency on China if it is about raw materials that are critical for our green transition. So, one of the possible solutions could be to create a raw materials club to overcome China's monopoly in this field. We have a lot of good work ahead of us, but important is the message that one thing is for sure. The US and the European Union, we stand stronger individually when we stand together collectively. Ladies and gentlemen, my final point has to do with the reform of our economic governance. You have worked so much on this, Mario. So I am glad that we have delivered a new proposal, which I think resonates with everything, dear Mario, that you have been saying for almost 10 years now. We have listened very carefully. You have always said that the future of our children needs both. That we invest in sustainability, but also that we invest sustainably. And this is why we want to give national governments more flexibility on their debt reduction path, to open the space for strategic investments. The Maastricht targets do not change. What changes is how we get there. There will be a common European framework in which member states will design a plan on how to achieve a gradual reduction of public debt, where investments and reforms will go hand in hand. There will be more freedom to invest, but also more scrutiny on the process once the plan has been agreed, and thus tougher implementation. With this proposal, we could move past a whole decade of divisive debates on our economic governance in the European Union. It is an economic governance that works for Europe because it works for all member states. And I believe, dear Mario, that this is also what you have always strived for throughout your entire career. Roughly 1 year ago, you said, Europe is trying to find a new balance between sustainability, reforms, and investment to support demand. End of quote. And I'm so grateful for your contribution, dear Mario, to finding this balance. I know that you will leave as your legacy a new research center on European policy right here at Bocconi, and I'm sure it will become an important resource in our work at the Commission. And I will still count on your advice, my dear friend, in the years to come. We're speaking on a regular basis. I have the questions, you have the precious advice for me. Europe needs your wisdom. Europe needs your capacity to build bridges between academia and politics, as always between the North and the South, but also bridges between the difficulties of the present and a brighter future for all. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating a great Italian, a great economist, and a great European. Grazie, Mario.